Welcome to another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. I'm your host, Keandra Jones. This podcast educates, ignites inspiration, fosters encouragement, and paves the way for growth among small businesses and the overall Oak Cliff community. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dallas Zoo, Home Care Network, Breakfast Brothers, and ServPro. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get into it. Today's episode is titled The Fundraising Formula with Donna Miller. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Donna Miller is the founder of Miller Consulting, which specializes in fundraising, marketing, PR, strategic planning, and community relations. She has led successful campaigns for the Frontiers of Flight Museum, DME Exchange of Dallas, and the Oak Cliff Society of Fine Arts, securing major grants from the U.S. Department of Commerce, the Meadows Foundation, and so many others. She has staffed executives for donor visits, secured funding from top Texas foundations, and developed key fundraising materials for nonprofits. A hands-on consultant, Miller manages teams while engaging in every detail from strategy to event setup. She excels at reframing ideas and guiding projects into new territories and staying ahead of industry trends. A proven leader and a mentor, she continues to drive impact across businesses and nonprofit sectors. Okay, so please help me welcome Miss Donna Miller. Good morning. Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon.
It's afternoon, yeah.
Well, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good. It's good that you're here today. So Donna, it is customary that we ask at least two of the same questions to all of our guests.
Okay.
All right. So the first and last question are the same for everybody. Everything else in the middle is just whatever comes off.
Okay.
Comes from here, and who knows what that's going to
Who
be.
who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Okay, the first question is, who is Donna Miller outside of all of your accomplishments? Who are you?
Such a subtle question.
Who are you? What?
I think I'm a person who loves people and loves my community, loves adventure, loves trying new things, learning new things, much as I might complain about it at the beginning. And that's been my life and my career.
Okay, so with that, and Donna, so Bob Stimson introduced me to you probably 17 or 18
A
years
long
ago.
time ago.
Very, very long time ago. And you've always been so professional and so gracious. You're always such a prim and proper lady. You always have been, even when I am going crazy and hiding under my desk and crying and shaking. You remember that?
I
right?
do. I do. I do.
You have always been so well composed every time I see you. So, what helps with that? What kinds of hobbies do you have?
Um, I don't really have hobbies.
Okay.
I mean, I read a lot.
Okay.
I read all kinds of different things,
Mhm.
and I occasionally garden,
Okay.
but I wouldn't say I have a hobby. Wouldn't say. But I will tell you a funny story about Bob Stimson.
Please do. I always want to know all the dirt on Bob.
So I was in Cox Market
Uh-huh.
several months ago,
Uh-huh.
and I was standing at the cash register with my little basket of stuff,
Mhm.
and I said something to the cashier. They had a question or something, and I was responding. And behind me, I heard this male voice go, "Don't believe a word she says. She's completely questionable."
Oh my gosh.
And for just like this nanosecond, I was like, "Who is that?" And then I turned around and it was Bob.
Listen, Bob Stimson, I hope he sees this. He is a character. He is a character, I can see him saying
Oh, yeah.
saying that
Yeah.
and doing that. He
Yeah.
is a character. Always has been. And I've now known him for
A long
a
time.
very, very long time. And so
Yeah.
he's always going to be himself. Um, so you're saying, okay, well, I don't really have hobbies, but I read a whole lot. And so one of the things that hasn't, for one of the many things that impressed me about you is the fact that you're such a speed reader.
I am a speed reader,
Yeah.
and it's good and bad.
Uh-huh.
It's good in my work
Hmm.
because I have to read pages and pages and pages and pages of requests for proposals and guideline requirements. And does the paper have to be purple? Does the paper have to be blue? Does it have to be 3-hole punched?
Hmm.
Does the type have to be 11 points, whatever?
Hmm.
And so it's good that I read quickly.
Hmm.
It's bad because it means that I'm in such a habit of skimming that I can't actually read novels. Because novels are all about the experience and the characters. And my sons read novels. They're
Hmm.
English majors,
Oh,
so they read novels.
okay.
They read great books.
Mhm.
And I can't do it because I'm like skimming, and you really can't skim, 100 years of solitude. so,
Huh.
so it's a great gift in business, but it does come at for me at least, it comes at a certain kind of cost.
Sure. I never considered that. I've always just envied that you can do that so very quickly. I mean, I've literally seen you just go through, and I'm like, doggone it, you read all that fast. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an amazing gift.
Well, it comes in really, really handy. Part of it is probably from my training as a as a pianist. Because if you think about it, when you're reading piano scores, you're reading the treble and the bass at the same time with all kinds of notes everywhere.
Mm,
So you get used to spatial comprehension.
sure.
I think. I don't know. So that's my theory. But
So, how often do you play?
I don't play.
You don't play anymore? Or-
Mm-mm.
Okay,
No.
okay, okay. Huh, very interesting. So, you also mentioned gardening.
Yes.
You garden.
I like to garden.
So, what types of things do you plant?
Random things I see at the nursery.
Random things like what was the last thing that you planted?
Uh, um, some herbs, I think.
Some herbs.
Yeah, one of my friends, she's one of those people who plans. She lays out their rooms with
Mm-hmm.
the little cutouts,
Mm-hmm.
and lays out the gardens,
Mm-hmm.
so she knows where everything's going. And I just sort of randomly pick plants and
Yeah.
randomly put them somewhere.
I bet it turns out beautiful
Oh,
when it's
it's
unplanned.
somewhere, and then sometimes I have to move it.
Yeah.
But it's there's no plan in my gardening.
That's okay. Well, what you do for a living, you're planning all the time.
Well, that's true. It's probably kind of a reaction against that.
Sure, sure. Because you're constantly in plan mode while you're fundraising.
Right.
Constantly. So I can see not wanting to have a planned
Garden.
garden.
Yeah, that's true.
It makes sense to me.
That's true.
So, how long have you been in the fundraising business?
Well, I mentioned that I had training as a pianist, so
Mhm.
I went to college as a piano performance major
Okay.
and a music history major. So I had two majors.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, I'm okay as a pianist, but I'm not good, or certainly not great. And so I knew I wasn't a performer.
Okay.
I don't have the personality to be a performer either. And I knew I didn't want to be a music historian for two reasons. One, I would have to learn French or Italian, possibly German, and I'm terrible at languages. As people who know that I'm trying to learn Spanish know very well. And two, I didn't want to be in a library because I'm a chitter chatter thing. I'm a chatty person. So I decided to go into management.
Okay.
And so in arts management, and within the arts management realm, I decided that marketing and fundraising was where I wanted to be.
Mhm.
And so I really do. I'm one of those rare people that's doing exactly what I went to graduate school to do.
Good for you. I didn't know that about
Yeah.
you. Oh, that's awesome. I think you're the only person that I know.
Yeah,
That's done.
I'm doing exactly what I decided when I was 22 years old that, oh, I'd probably be okay at that. Now, I don't only work in the arts, but I still work in the arts a lot, but the skills are the same. Whether you're working in the arts or you're working for social service agencies or workforce training programs or
So, okay, you said the skills are the same. What kind of transferable? What skills does it take to do all of those things?
it's just a matter of learning about the cause, learning about the mission, believing in the mission,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't talk about something you don't believe in.
That's true.
So it's learning what the pros are, what the selling points are, why it's important, and being able to convey that either through the written word or through talking, developing presentations, developing budgets is the same, whether you're trying to put together a capital campaign for an arts organization or a budget for a special event for a social service agency. It's all the same. I mean, there's the same skills, they're management skills. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter um, um, what kind of nonprofit I'm working with. And in my public relations work, it also doesn't matter too, because they cross over. It's
Mhm.
just understanding the cause, understanding what the mission is, what the point is.
Interesting. I don't know that I would have thought that those would go together, but your strategy is basically the same for okay. Well, that makes plenty of sense.
Yeah, it's the same. It's an endeavor. It's a business, and
Mm.
so to move it forward, the steps are almost always the same.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Okay, so let's just say that someone is looking for these particular types of services that you offer, all of which you just mentioned. Um, but they're a new business. They're a new organization. They're a new nonprofit.
Hmm.
What advice would you have for that organization to get started raising money?
Well, that's a really hard question, and in fact, I had that conversation yesterday morning.
Did you?
I did, and um, a lot of it is just sort of trying to convey or temper expectations, because starting a new business, starting a new nonprofit, particularly starting a new nonprofit, I think a lot of people think, okay, this is going to be so much nicer, so much more meaningful, so much more important than my business where I was making pencils.
Mhm.
And now I get to do something that truly speaks to my heart,
Yeah.
which is true.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Mhm.
But it's just as hard, if not harder, than building a business that makes pencils,
Yeah.
because people have to buy pencils.
Mhm.
People don't have to buy a vision. That's why it's called a nonprofit,
Mm.
is because the market is not there. It's the difference between Broadway shows and what happens in nonprofit theaters. Now there's crossover,
Sure.
but it's very different kind of mission, very different kind of show. And so people have to understand that it's a slog. I actually use that word. I'm not quite sure that was client friendly using word to use.
I love it.
I just
We're
said
unscripted, so
you've
yeah.
got to know it's a long slog, and it's a combination of, there are very certain steps you have to take to make sure that you apply for your nonprofit, and it can all sound very confusing and intimidating. It's actually not. It- but you just have to do step by step by step. And then a lot of new people that are forming nonprofits, and this is particularly true of clients. I mean, this is true of clients across the board. Um, they just think that because it's a good cause,
Mhm.
people will give. I
Mhm.
mean, why wouldn't they?
Mhm.
Yes, it's a good cause, but there's 5,000 other good causes within a 2-mile radius.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, particularly with private foundations and maybe even government funding, because there's a form and a process, the tendency is to think, okay, I'm going to fill this form out, And if I do everything right on the form, then I'll get the money. It's like, no, you can do everything perfectly. And it's still, it might work, it might not. And my job, I think, is to never take my clients into a place where I don't think they at least have a 50-50 chance. Now, sometimes I'll say, well, this is a real long shot. If you want me to spend time on it, I will. I'll do my absolute best.
Right.
But they need to know up front that the odds aren't good.
Yeah.
So conveying that is part of my responsibility. It's not something that everybody wants to hear.
Sure.
It's not fun for
Right.
people to hear,
Right.
particularly who are just kind of starting out in the nonprofit world.
Mm.
That doesn't make sense to them.
Right.
But it's very, very true. So to convey that without sounding like a downer,
You're probably not going to get this money.
you're probably not going to
Yeah,
get it, but we
yeah.
can try.
Yeah, right. You know,
So that's kind of, and I take it very personally. I hate to let people down. I hate getting no's. I
Yeah.
cry when I get no's.
My goodness. No, but I could see you crying.
too. I hate it. Now, I think if it's a long shot and I get a no, that's kind of okay.
Sure.
But if I think it's a really good odds and I've done a good job and I get a no, it's devastating.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see you crying because you do care so much about the kinds of businesses that you take on as clients. So what determines, especially from a new nonprofit standpoint, what determines if you'll take them on as a client?
Whether they'll pay me.
Oh, that's the greatest answer ever. Understood. Hey, we're in business here. That makes sense.
No, I mean, if I think I really, really can't help them,
Mhm.
then I just say, I just don't think I can help you.
Yeah.
If I think I can do a good job and move the ball down the road, I'll say, here's what I think I can do. Here's what we're up against. I'll do my absolute best for you. And then we'll just see.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with new clients, I'll say, okay, let's try it for 3 months or 6 months. Because if I can't talk to you and you can't talk to me, then we're not going to be a good team.
Right.
And my goal is to be a good team and to work with people for years and years and years. I mean, I have clients that I've had for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Us.
Because they depend on me.
Sure.
And I take that very personally.
Sure. Sure. So when you, as a client of yours, obviously our nonprofit is Oak Cliff Empowered. And when you hear about new initiatives, well, let me ask this a different way. When you get a new initiative from a new organization, what is the likelihood or percentage? And I know you may not know this off the top of your head, but based on your experience, if it's a new nonprofit with a new initiative, how likely are they to get any kind of funding in the first 12 months?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends on who they know.
Okay.
It depends on if they run in certain social networks,
Mhm.
then if they run in high net worth, high influence, high profile social networks, then the odds are much, much better. That's just the way the world works.
Okay.
If they come in and they don't even have to be in those networks, they just have to have access to those networks.
Okay.
Because then those people will open doors. Now, it's not a given, but it's definitely the way things work.
Okay.
And it works that way everywhere, not just in Dallas, but everywhere in the nation. And it makes sense because giving is personal. If you ask me for money, I'm going to find it hard to say no. Particularly because I know that I'm going to turn around and ask you for money. That's just the way it works.
Right.
And if you're able to ask people for it's one thing if I say, Keandra, will you give me $50 for my, kids' sports club,
Sure.
you'll say yes. But if I come to you and say, Keandra, I have this fascinating new business, it's really important, blah, 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 blah. Will you be one of our seed donors for $25,000? You're going to look at me and go, So it depends on your capability at that level.
Sure.
So it's access. It's also how many doors you can open. And then if it's just sort of you happen to fit, if the organization happens to fit this one funding source that's just, they're perfectly meshed. And sometimes that's just luck. Sometimes it's research. Like with the Texas Talent Connection. I mean, I kind of thought, I don't know about this one. And it worked.
Yeah.
So that was both luck and skill. They came together.
Yeah.
So there's no predicting it. There's no predicting. I would say don't go into opening on a nonprofit unless you already kind of have at least an idea of who your funding network is going to be. Because individuals are always key. Because I can make a decision in a heartbeat.
Right.
I can say yes, no.
Right.
The government entities, private foundations, corporate giving, much, much, much longer time frame. And some of them only have one deadline a year. So if you apply December 31st of 2024 and they say no, well, you have to wait until December 31st, 2025. It's a very long game.
Yeah.
So it's all very strategic. And my head is full of deadlines and names and connections, and it's all in the art. The art is putting it all together. Yeah. That's what I really like.
Yeah.
But hence the random garden.
Makes sense.
But fundraising, PR, there's a really interesting combination of process, deadlines, and creativity. And it all has to come together, at least for me, for how I do it.
Okay. So, Donna, you obviously you've got the magic potion, the secret sauce. You know how to do this. You've been doing it a long time, and obviously you're really good at this. You're successful at this. Tell me, what is, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question. What keeps you doing this? What do you enjoy about fundraising? Because it's not fun to me. So what do you enjoy about it?
That almost every single day I meet somebody new and I learn something new. And I put people together that didn't know each other before.
Oh, I love
and I collaborate and I encourage a collaboration with people that hadn't collaborated before. And so it's just building and connecting. And that's what is amazing.
Yeah. Oh,
that's what I enjoy.
So you're a connector.
I try to be.
Yeah.
I try to be.
Oh, I love that. You know, even at your annual tamale supper, you're connecting people the whole time.
Totally.
I love that. And
Totally.
I look forward to that every year.
I had one of my clients many years ago. He came and I was still like desperately putting things together because he got there a little early. And he just looked at me and he said, and I'm not, this was kind of a compliment, but it's one of those things where you know, it wasn't quite a compliment. And he says, you know, Donna, you have the most interesting friends.
Oh, gosh. I mean, did he?
No, he meant you have some really unusual people at your party.
You know, I mean, I was there. So, I mean, what was he trying to say?
No, this was quite a long time ago.
Oh.
That's the point.
Right.
That's the whole
Right.
point, because and Oak Cliff is kind of like
Oh, I
that.
love that.
You have to put random people together, and in that moment is when the magic happens.
Yeah.
Because you never know what they're going to say.
That's exactly right. Do you remember our very first grant? And I'll forever be indebted to Wendy Burton. Do you remember?
It was from the Communities Foundation of Texas, right?
Yes.
And you got it because you cried.
Because I cried. That's exactly right. I got our very first grant because I cried. And I did not mean to cry, but I was just so overwhelmed. And she took compassion.
It was a great tactic.
I didn't mean to. I wish I was one of those kinds of people that could kind of cry on demand,
Well,
but I'm not.
I mean, we say that, and you did cry, and it was funny. But the point was, you'd already done a lot of upfront work, so she knew that there was solidity there.
Yeah.
There was a real program and a real plan. So that's why she felt comfortable in making that decision.
Or she wanted me to just shut up.
Or I don't think that was it.
Just shut up. Stop crying. Let me write you.
I don't think that was it. But again, to the point, it's really even the most process-driven decisions ultimately come down to either human connections or what I am interested in, which is another hard thing to explain to clients, because a lot of times, if you're reading that, the Donna Miller Foundation gives to general charitable causes. Well, that sounds like any nonprofit could apply, right?
Right.
Seems like sound reasoning, but what I spend enormous amount of times looking at IRS Form 990s, because they tell you a lot. And if you look at the giving history of Donna Miller Foundation, and for the past 5 years, all I've done is given to kitties and puppies, I'm not going to give to your cause in healthcare, no matter how fabulous it is.
Right.
It's just because I have, for whatever random personal reason, I've decided that I'm giving to kitties and puppies.
Right.
And people hate to hear that from me. They'll say, well, but I'm a good cause. Why wouldn't they give to me?
Well, that's not their sweet spot.
That's not, I mean, you can't make them do it.
They do with their money what they want.
Right, it's their money.
Yeah.
And so that's another hard thing that people new to the business, new to the fundraising world, have a hard time with, because it doesn't make sense in a way, because it's not based on merit. It's just, well, I like giving to kitties. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So over the years, you have secured hundreds of thousands, if not, well, millions of dollars over the course of your career. You've gotten all of this money for these nonprofits and groups and organizations, etc. If you can pinpoint one day that was your proudest moment, what day would that have been in fundraising?
Oh, I don't know.
No, it's a crazy question.
Well, no, it's a good question, but it's kind of like asking what was the happiest day of your life? I mean, I have an easy answer. It was when my sons were born.
Sure.
But I don't know. Every single yes is exciting as the last one.
Yeah.
I really don't know that I could say there was just one day.
Yeah. Well, I will share one that I had with you. So I know it's your question, but whatever.
You can answer
it. I'll answer it. So when you told us that applying for that last grant was a long shot, and then we got the letter that went to my junk mail saying we got it, and it was a total surprise to both me and you.
Right.
And as out of shape as I am, I thought I could like do a back handspring, you know, off the stairs when that happened. And so I can only imagine how often that happens for you. And are you as excited each time that it does?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yes. Maybe not a surprise because that was new for us.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a long shot in that we fit it, so it was reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But we hadn't done it before, and who knew? But no, every time I get that yes, it's just like, I think it's personally gratifying, but more importantly, it's I helped you.
Yeah. And you do all the time, over and over and over again. We would not, and I would want to publicly say this, our organization would not be where it is had it not been for you. And so I appreciate your sacrifice and your passion for our organization. Our Oak Cliff Works program would not have had all the funding that it's had over the years had it not been for you. Now, we did use, I mean, for all of our government money, you were able to secure all of that for us, and our state
Yeah, that
dollars.
was exciting. Uh, and that's um I mean, a lot of the time fundraise, like I said, it's very process driven and
Yeah.
it can be very mundane.
Yeah, sure.
It's like after this, I have to go back to my office and put together a PDF document with all of these files, which I barely know how to do, but I can do it.
Oh my gosh.
And those moments, I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But that's part of it. That's
Yeah.
just a step that has to be taken
Sure.
in order to have the moments of yes, or and a lot of times, even if it's a no, um, in the they say in sales, you have to keep going. You have to
Mhm.
try again.
Mhm.
Eventually, if it's a good fit, eventually they'll say no. And
Mhm.
they'll say yes. For the most part, fundraising, in my experience, is a very collaborative, friendly world,
Mhm.
which is really interesting because it's about as cutthroat as it gets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for my organizations to get a yes means that somebody else got a no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for my organization to get a yes from a new prospect, a lot of times means they dropped an organization. So it's a competitive world out there, but I've not experienced that sense of where you might imagine it would be animosity.
Mhm.
I mean, we all know the game.
Yeah.
We all know that we have to play it as good as we could possibly play it,
Mhm.
and that's just the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And ideally, we'd be able to increase the amount of funding so that more people, but
Right.
that's not always the way it works. You know, if
Mhm.
Donna Miller Foundation has $10,000 to give away, and I decide to give to a new organization, but not raise my $10,000,
Mhm.
most likely somebody's going to drop out.
Yeah.
Is there anything that organization did incorrectly? Usually not.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if they submitted the proposal in a bad way, or if they, dissed me in the grocery store, maybe.
Mhm.
Usually it's just my priorities
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just the way the game's played.
So, have you ever had two clients that did somewhat of the same things and you're applying for the same funding from some of the same sources, one gets funded and the others don't?
That's a very what I try to do is, as seldom as possible, work for organizations that are in the same arena.
Smart.
Um, um, Now, if I'm working in the arts and I'm working with a dance group and I'm working with a music group, arts donors are arts donors are arts donors. They're not.
Mm.
I mean, some people are only dance donors for the most part, and some people are only music donors, but that's not as that's a much smaller divide than somebody who's only giving to organizations like the Red Cross.
Yeah.
If I'm raising money for an experimental dance group, that's not going to be competitive with a group with an organization that only funds social services. So that's something that I have to be very aware of and very careful of, and very discreet about.
Sure.
I mean, I don't do a lot of talking about my clients.
Sure. So when you're preparing clients to or for prospect visits, how would you prepare a Keandra? Well, let me not use me because I'm different than most, and you got to reel me in and corral me and all the things. The average client, not a high maintenance one. How do you prepare the average president or CEO for a visit from a potential prospect?
Well, I've been very lucky for the most part to work with very passionate presidents because just the nature of the job is that for the most part, people don't volunteer to be president or chair of a nonprofit organization if they don't believe in the cause already. So the belief has to be there because that shows through everything. Because if you believe in something, you talk like you believe in something.
That's right.
And that passion comes through, even if you're not particularly a public speaker, or if you're not particularly articulate, it still comes through. People can see it through your words. More importantly, they can see it through your actions and the amount of time that person is already spending with the organization, and usually the amount of their personal money that they're already donating. It's much easier to say, I believe in this. Here's why I believe in this. Here's what I do because I believe in this. Won't you join me?
Right.
That's hard to resist.
Right. That's right.
People do it every day.
Sure.
It's hard to resist. So we talk about that. We talk about the way to describe the importance of the mission. The development of talking points is an important tool. What are the top 3 things? What are the top 5 things that people need to know about what we're doing and why it's important? So we'll develop that. We'll go over those kinds of things. Depending on whether it's just a, hey, get to know, or if it's an actual, okay, we're going to go in and today's the visit where we make the request. And some people are natural at this. Some people aren't. I really have to work at it. But it's like asking for anything. If I say, okay, Keandra, I've described my organization. I've told you what I'm doing. I've said, why is it so important? Won't you join me? Will you consider $100,000 gift? And then you have to sit and look.
Oh, wow.
And that's hard.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But it's important.
Yeah.
Because it's that pause.
That awkward.
It's like I went to the opera on Saturday, and this may just be a pet peeve of mine, but the music is so overwhelming and the emotion, and it's building to this wonderful, either a big climax or this very kind of settling into the serenity of the moment. And we need to hear that music and allow that moment of beauty or joy or sadness to happen. And instead, what everybody does is they start clapping before the music is ended. And it's just like, no.
Yeah.
So making an ask is kind of like that. Don't step on it. Let it be.
Very interesting.
Which is hard.
Very interesting. I think that most people are uncomfortable with the silence.
Well, sure. Of course. Silence is an awkward thing. Now, at the opera, it's partly maybe they were just carried away with emotion, or maybe they just thought that's what they were supposed to do.
Sure.
Maybe because I'm was trained as a musician. It's more important to me than to most people. I don't know. But in and fundraising is sales. It's sales. It's persuasion.
It is.
So allowing that, just giving people a moment to contemplate is powerful, because otherwise you've just you've asked an important question and then you just keep rattling on.
Yeah.
It's like if I ask you to marry me and
yes, Donna. Yes.
Thank you. If I said, please marry me. Oh, and then by the way, we could go and blah, blah, blah. I've ruined the moment, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that.
I will tell you, that is such a huge pet peeve of mine. I hate when people are like,
when people ask you to marry you.
Well, no, that's not a pet peeve of mine. By all means, please, everyone ask me. That's not a pet peeve. But when people are like, good morning, how are you doing? How was your day? Yeah, I'm going into, and they ask you these questions with no expectation. Well, they don't care, really. That's what it is. They don't care how you're doing. That just drives me insane. But anyway, not about me.
It's sort of like that.
Sort of like that. But I really want the people to ask me to marry them. That's
You've got the perfect platform. It's out there now.
People, please ask me to marry you. I would love that. Let me get some. Okay. But anyway, let's move on before I get in trouble. Okay. Okay, Donna. I couldn't resist jumping on that. I think you set me up.
Did not.
So gonna get in trouble. Okay, so moving on. So in the years of fundraising that you've done this, do you ever sit back, Donna? And let me back up a bit. The other day, I was asked not to be married, but I'm not gonna let it go. To sit on a board of directors, and the CEO of the organization asked me to send a resume. And I said, sir, I haven't put together a resume in so long. I mean, I have a bio, but a resume, really? I need that to sit on the board. And I really thought if I wanted to sit on the board or not based on that. But I had to create a resume. But in doing that, it gave me the opportunity to kind of jot down some of the accomplishments over the years, and it was such an interesting exercise. And so my question to you is, Donna, do you ever sit back and say, my goodness, through Oak Cliff Works, because I wrote these grants, have I impacted hundreds of students' lives? Have you ever gone into these programs and been able to say, it's because of my efforts that these lives have been touched? Do you ever do that?
I think I must subconsciously, but the fundraising personality is a very odd personality. And it's not just me. When I talk to other people in this business, we have the same kind of characteristic, meaning that to be successful in fundraising, to be successful in that kind of very public, to use a jargon phrase, public-facing, risky career, where at any moment I fall flat on my face, requires a certain amount of confidence and chutzpah. So one has to have that, but at the same time, I should never be in front. Because the organization, the volunteer board chair, the volunteer donors making the ask, they're in front. So it's an unusual personality because I think because the assertiveness it takes to be doing what I'm doing should not translate into I'm the star, because that isn't going to work. So do I think about, oh, yay, look what I did? Yes, of course I do. But in here.
Sure. I think that's...
Now, all of my friends will probably disagree and say, man, she just talks about herself all the time.
No one says that about Donna Miller. No one says that.
I hope not.
Because you don't.
But that's true of lots of people that I talk to in fundraising, just because it's a dichotomy.
Sure.
But you can see how it would be necessary.
Yeah. In knowing you're just an automatically you're just an humble person. But at some point, and I get it, like internally, you're taking inventory of what you've done. But at some point, your head's got to swell a little bit, because you have, without your efforts, some of these organizations would not exist, and you're actually changing lives.
Well, but that's the whole point. I mean,
Sure.
That's the point.
Yeah.
If I can't do that, I'm not doing a very good job.
Well, that makes you a superstar.
Maybe.
I think it makes you a star.
Maybe.
I think your head needs to be bigger.
It's growing by the moment.
I think that makes you phenomenal, because where would we be without Donna Miller? And we appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Kendra.
We appreciate that. So for a new organization, nonprofit, whatever, that is in need of funding, what are some recommendations that you would have for them to position themselves to receive?
Well, first of all, they need to make sure that they've done that they actually have nonprofit status.
Okay.
Because there's several steps that have to be taken to achieve that. And some of them are state. And some people think, okay, I have the state documents, so I'm done. I'm a nonprofit. But really, you have to... It's the IRS recognition of an organization as the 501c3 that's key. Without that, people can give to you. It's just not tax deductible, and your organization won't be eligible for private foundation gifts and corporate gifts for the most part, and sometimes government entities. So the paperwork is essential. And then sort of analyzing not only your mission and your business plan, but also do the analysis. Who are the people that I can contact? Where are my social networks? Where's the strength in terms of people that I can call on to open all of those important doors? Do I have any? And if I do, how can I contact them? I wouldn't say how can I use them, but fundraising is it's like finding a job. What do we do when we're trying to find a job? For the most part, we tell everybody in the whole world, hey, I'm looking for a job. Yeah. Or my son is looking for a job. Do you know anyone?
Yeah.
Or it's like dating. Hey, I'm trying to find someone to ask me to marry me. Who should I call?
Somebody please ask me to marry them. Please.
Who should I call?
Right.
So sort of analyze your access to different kinds of networks. Yeah. Make sure that if you're alone, if you're a loner sitting in your den by yourself, you may have the greatest idea in the world. But if nobody knows about it,
that's right,
nobody can fund you. And then really do the kind of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, really do that analysis. There may be a new word for it. That may be old jargon.
Well, I think that's still relevant. Yeah.
But do that and do it with as much input from other people as possible, because somebody may think, you may think, this is the greatest thing in the world. This is a fabulous cause. I should be able to raise lots and lots and lots of money. And you go out and the first 10 people that you talk to that aren't your loved ones are, if the first 10 people that you talk to are sort of like, well, yeah, that sounds kind of nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's indicative that you're not touching on a broad enough area.
Okay.
So do that kind of homework. And then kind of try to be prepared that if you're going to be a nonprofit, money just doesn't fall from heaven. Now, if for some reason you're lucky enough to have lucked into some sort of ongoing government contracts, or, that just kind of happened and you have that and you can build from that, that's different. But without that, try to realize that part of being a founder of a nonprofit, or part of being a CEO or an executive director of a nonprofit, is an ongoing battle of wills. It never ends.
Right.
So you have to be willing to do that work, because it's just not going to happen. So if anything bothers me the most about my work, it's that it really is never ending.
Yeah.
It's never ending.
Sure.
Oh, yay, we raised some money.
Yeah. And we spent that money. We spent it before we got.
Yeah. And it's just deadline after deadline after deadline after deadline.
Sure.
And and I've been doing this for a long time, so it's internalized, but it's still deadline after deadline after deadline after deadline. And that takes a certain getting used to.
Yeah.
So all of that goes into founding and running a nonprofit, whether it's a startup, whether it's ongoing, because it never ends. That's why it's a nonprofit.
Sure.
It does. Sure. I mean, running a business doesn't end.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
true.
None of that ends. You got to be in for it for the long haul. It doesn't get easier.
That makes sense. So with all that said, are you taking on new clients? Are you taking
every day?
Every day we're taking on
every
new
day.
Clients. So
not every day.
Well,
but that was one of that when I first started out on my own, that was a really good piece. And I guess maybe I kind of intuitively knew it, but one of the best pieces of advice I got from a woman who had been doing it herself for a while, she said, actually 2 of them said this, one in public relations and one in fundraising. They said, no matter how busy you are, don't ever think that you can coast, because you have got to be building those new clients every day, because you never know when one is going to go away.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I have clients that I've had for years and years and years, and then something will happen.
Sure.
And it happened to me last year.
Yeah.
It just they couldn't go forward for. Luckily, it wasn't my fault, but they couldn't move forward. Well, that's a big chunk of my income.
Sure.
That I had to be prepared to replace.
Sure.
Did I do it at the drop of a hat? No. But did I do it? Yeah. But you have to not be scared by that. You have to know it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I whined. I'm sure I whined and was like, I can't do it. I'm so tired of it.
No, you're not much of a whiner.
Well, yeah, I kind of am.
So with that being said, you're taking on new clients. What is the best way for someone to reach you if they're watching this and they need your help with fundraising, PR, marketing, all the things? How can they reach Donna Miller?
Well, they can go to my website. It's millerpr.com.
Okay.
And it has my phone number, which is, do you want me to say my phone number?
Sure.
My phone number is 214-226-1265.
Okay.
And my email is dmiller@millerpr.com.
Okay.
So they can get in touch with me like that. One of the nicest things that a new client ever said about me was they called me up and they were talking to me and we were talking about what to do, and we scheduled a meeting, and so we were face to face, and they looked at me and they said, "You are exactly like your website."
Oh, that's awesome.
I thought, perfect. That's what I wanted it to be, as a reflection of me.
Yeah.
Not me personally, but just me. Well, me, yes, me as a person, me as a
Yeah.
professional,
Sure.
because you have to like that.
Yeah.
And she said, You're just like your website."
I love that. I love that. Well, today we have learned about Donna Miller and ways in which she can help your business grow and develop. And so we're putting all the information on the screen so that you can reach out to her if you need her services. Again, thank you, Donna, for being here today.
You're welcome.
You have been you're always so pleasant to be around. So
Oh, thanks.
thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Keandra Jones. And again, thank you for watching another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. We'll see you next time.